Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
When we asked people how many of them were pro-life, an overwhelming 64% of voters in Tennessee stand for life. So our mission is clear. Tennesseans have an opportunity to speak clearly, not only for their state, but for what they believe on this issue.
A reality star Josh Duggar is released from jail to await his trial for federal child pornography charges. He's been released to a third-party custodian on the condition that he does not return home and not have any contact with his 6 children unless his wife is present.
Born on the 3rd of March, 1988, Joshua James Duggar is the oldest Duggar child and easily the most controversial. He was already 17 when his parents began allowing documentary and television crews into the home to film the family in 2005, and he appeared prominently in the early seasons. By comparison to some of the younger Duggar siblings, Josh appears to have had a close bond with both his parents, especially mother Michelle. Observers with more psychology credentials have speculated that Josh may have received more one-on-one attention from his parents. Jana, the second child, wasn't born until 1990, so Josh had a couple years alone to cement his place as the apple of his parents' eye. Josh was only 4 years old when Michelle began using the Advanced Training Institute homeschooling program, or ATI, developed by Bill Gothard, which we discussed in Part 6. There's a link to that video in the description if you missed it and want to know more. Josh never attended public school, though he did pass Arkansas's state test and received a general equivalency diploma. I'm not sure how taxing that state equivalency test is, but I do find it impressive that he passed it at only age 16. While there is a strong indication that Josh is intelligent and eager to learn, he did not go on to college or university. Oh no, Jim Bob had much bigger plans for his oldest son. As a teen, Josh was often by his father's side as Jim Bob served for 2 terms as a member of the Arkansas House of Representatives. It seems that Josh was slated to follow in his father's footsteps as he became politically active in his own right. In 2007, Josh worked part-time as a political advisor under the business name Strategic Political Services. He was just 19 at the time. Can you imagine being a hopeful candidate looking for some advice on how to tighten up your campaign, and you show up to the meeting only to be sitting across the table from a homeschooled 19-year-old car salesman? I would be asking for a refund immediately. A year later, Josh started gaining real political experience, working on the 2008 gubernatorial campaign of Arkansas's Mike Huckabee. By 2012, Josh was working on the campaign of presidential candidate Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania, even giving speeches at Santorum's rallies. And his personal life was no less eventful. Josh would eventually propose to Anna Renee Keller. The pair's courtship and engagement were used as storylines for the Duggar television shows. But there were rumors on Reddit that Josh had been courting another woman before Anna, and that young woman and her family had caught wind of a dark secret the Duggar family was hiding, and they backed out of the courtship. This rumor proved to be true, as the young woman was revealed to be a daughter of the Duggars' longtime friends Jim and Bobby Holt during their testimony in Josh's recent trial. The Holts attended the same church as the Duggars, and many of their children were close friends. Of the relationship between Josh and her daughter, Bobby said it was more of a betrothal, saying in her testimony,
"It was formal. They were 14.
In 2008, Josh would go on to marry Anna Keller instead. They were both just 20 years old. Let's talk about Anna and the Keller family for a moment, because I believe they are a key part of how Josh was able to hide the skeletons in the back of his closet for so long. Anna Keller was born in 1988, the 5th of 8 children to her parents Mike and Suzette. Mike became a dedicated Christian at the age of 19 while attending one of Bill Gothard's seminars, which was called the Seminar in Basic Youth Conflicts at that time. Like the Duggars, the Kellers also homeschooled their children using the curriculum offered by Gothard's Advanced Training Institute. Initially, Mike worked as a welder to support his large family. After serving jury duty in 1994, Mike observed a need for a ministry in the juvenile detention center and began to volunteer. By 1996, Mike had left his job as a welder and dedicated himself to prison ministry full-time. Since the kids were homeschooled, they were closely involved with their father's work, and Anna seems to have taken a lot of his lessons to heart. What motivated Mike Keller was his belief that, through the word of God in the gospel, anyone, no matter how horrific their crimes, could be redeemed. While some independent fundamentalist Baptists talk the talk about forgiveness, compassion, and redemption, the Keller family truly walked the walk, and I can't fault them for that. Those in the U.S. prison system need all the compassion and hope they can get. From footage taken of Anna, it is clear that she is also a true believer in the redemptive power of Christ. Unfortunately for Anna, she would need to lean heavily on that belief in the years to come. But all of that was still ahead of them when the pair first met in 2006. Where did they meet? You already know. You can probably already guess. Yep, that's right. They met at an ATI homeschooling conference. Josh and Anna began having children almost immediately after they married, and have gone on to have 7 children in total. In June of 2013, Josh was offered a position with the Family Research Council, or FRC, as an executive director of their lobbying arm. Josh essentially was FRC's public face, giving speeches and talking with the press when necessary. There are some videos of Josh in action on YouTube if you're curious. Anna and their growing family moved to Maryland with Josh, and in the summer of 2013, the future looked bright for Josh and his budding political career. How soon that all would change. Remember that iceberg thing we started with? Let's get back to that right now. "2015 would prove to be a trying year for Josh and his young family. In March, the news broke that a woman named Danica Dillon was suing Josh over allegations that he had been violent during several sexual encounters. The case would later be dropped when it was discovered that Josh had not been in the state during one of the alleged incidents, but things were far from over for the reality star and lobbyist. On May 21st, 2015, In Touch released the details of a bombshell police report they had received. They reported that on the 7th of December 2006, Oprah's Harpo Studios received an alarming fax which they passed on to the police. Harpo Studios had received a warning from an unnamed 61-year-old woman who was concerned to learn that the Duggars had been asked to be guests on the Oprah Winfrey Show. This woman urged in her letter that
they are not what they seem to be.
The unnamed woman went on to say that there had been rumors that Josh had molested members of his family and that
Jim Bob lies to his church and his friends to make him look good. At this moment he is in trouble with the church for lying about and things that concern the way the church members reacted.
After receiving the report, the police interviewed members of the Duggar household, including Jim Bob and Michelle. As it turns out, there was more than just a grain of truth to the rumors. The report revealed that in 2002 and again in 2003, Jim Bob Duggar had been made aware that Josh, then 14, had been fondling 4 of his sisters as well as a family friend. I'm not going to go into the details for obvious reasons, but there's a link to the actual police report in the description for this video. Rather than speaking to a psychiatrist, Jim Bob and Michelle brought the issue to the church elders, who recommended that Josh be sent away to a program consisting of hard labor and strict rules. He was sent away from March until July of 2003. When he returned home, his father, along with a church elder, brought Josh to speak to Police Corporal Joseph Hutchins. According to the report, Hutchins gave Josh a very stern talk about what could happen to him if he continued his behavior. Hutchins then told Josh that his treatment program had been enough of a punishment. Though Hutchins was a mandatory reporter as an officer of the law, he did not report the incidents. Perhaps that has something to do with the fact that in 2007, Hutchins was himself embroiled in scandal when he was convicted of possessing illegal images of children as young as 2. Hutchins, a man who claimed his favorite quote to be, "Everything I enjoy is either illegal, immoral, or fattening," on his Yahoo adult profile, was jailed for 3 years. He was then arrested shortly after his release in 2010, this time for 4 counts of distribution, possession, or viewing of sexually explicit material involving a child. He was convicted in 2012 and was sentenced to 56 years in prison. Josh had been visiting his family in Arkansas when the news broke of his alleged crimes during his teen years. He resigned from his position with the FRC on the same day the In Touch article ran. Many of the Duggars released written statements about the report on their family website, including Josh, who wrote,
12 years ago, as a young teenager I acted inexcusably, for which I am extremely sorry and deeply regret. I hurt others, including my family and close friends. I confess this to my parents, who took several steps to help me address the situation. We spoke with the authorities, where I confessed my wrongdoing, and my parents arranged for me and those affected by my actions to receive counseling. I understood that if I continued down this wrong road that I would end up ruining my life. I sought forgiveness from those I had wronged and asked Christ to forgive me and come into my life. I would do anything to go back to those teen years and take different actions. In my life today, I am so very thankful for God's grace, mercy, and redemption.
The Duggar family site also had a statement from Anna, who admitted she had known of Josh's past when she married him, writing,
I can imagine the shock many of you are going through reading this. I remember feeling that same shock. It was not at the point of engagement, or after we were married, it was 2 years before Josh asked me to marry him. When my family and I first visited the Duggar home, Josh shared his past teenage mistakes.
If you thought Jim Bob and Michelle humping on Jess's mini golf date was bad, imagine being on this first date. Seems Anna had taken the teachings of Bill Gothard to heart, just as her father had. Her childhood, spent watching her parents minister and help to rehabilitate prisoners, made her the perfect potential partner for Josh Duggar. Anna went on to say,
When Josh asked me to marry him, I was able to say yes, knowing who Josh really is. Someone who had gone down a wrong path and had humbled himself before God and those whom he had offended.
the scandal had farther-reaching consequences for the Duggar clan. TLC not only canceled the show 19 Kids and Counting, they also pulled all the episodes off the air. It was clear that TLC sought to distance themselves from the eldest Duggar child, though Josh was not without support. Mike Huckabee and creationist preacher Banana Man Ray Comfort issued statements which were supportive of Josh and the Duggar family at large. In the first weeks, it seemed the family might survive with their reputations intact. Josh had been to treatment after all, right? On June 3rd and 5th, 2015, Megyn Kelly sat down to interview selected members of the Duggar family. Although a second police report had surfaced revealing that Jim Bob had failed to report Josh's crimes for 16 months, despite knowing the behaviors were getting worse, he defended their parenting choices, telling Megyn,
Looking back, we did the best we could under the circumstances. He was still a kid. He was still a juvenile. He wasn't an adult. This was not rape or anything like that. This was touching someone over their clothes.
Jim Bob also defended his decision to bring TLC cameras into his home, saying,
When they asked us to do that reality TV show, all of this had been taken care of 5 years before, and we had a clean bill of health from the state.
whatever that means. Daughter Jessa revealed that she didn't fully understand what was happening at the time of the incidents with Josh, but that she and her sister Jill defended their brother, insisting of Josh that
He was a boy, a young boy in puberty and a little too curious about girls, and that got him into some trouble.
by August, it seemed that the extended Duggar clan might be able to ride out the wave of Josh's scandal and return to the public eye, though the focus would now be on the younger generation. In contrast, Josh's reputation continued to plummet. On August 19th, the same day Jill and Jessa appeared on the cover of People magazine with the headline, Life After Scandal, the very first reports of the Ashley Madison data breach was released. I covered that scandal in depth in part 3. The link is down in the description if you missed that. Despite this latest scandal, TLC still took a chance on the Duggars, releasing a 3-part series starting on December 14th of 2015 called Jill and Jessa Counting On. The next few years saw Josh running a used car lot and not showing up to a lot of hearings for civil lawsuits. Rumors swirled of police inquiries, FBI raids, and even Homeland Security involvement. At the end of April 2021, the rumors would prove to be true yet again. On the 29th of April 2021, Josh Duggar was arrested by Homeland Security. For some reason, he agreed to sit down and speak with investigators, and the interrogation was recorded. Far from insisting on his innocence, Josh's reaction is best described as calmly self-incriminating. Take a listen to this clip from the interrogation to see what I mean. The full interrogation is in the description below, but it pretty much all sounds this awkward.
I've watched my friends, answer things, and they get them for conspiracy or for something, and I'm not. I know the federal statutes are broad, and there's a lot of things to it, and I'm not going to say anything that's going to
we don't
incriminate me or anything at all. I don't want to. I'm not. I'm not denying guilt, and I'm not saying that I'm. As far as anything goes, I don't want to say the wrong thing.
At the end of the day, you need to protect yourself.
Yeah, I don't want to say that I'm guilty or not. I'm just not saying, on accessing inappropriate content at some point, at any point in my life.
Not denying guilt?
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Either way, Josh pled not guilty and was released on May 6th into the custody of family friends so that he would not have any contact with his young children. I don't have the stomach to describe to you the sort of images and video that Josh had secretly been procuring and watching on one of his business computers. Victims shown in the material ranged in age, but some were as young as 18 months. I have a link down below that will bring you to a person much more qualified to explain it than I am, but I warn you, this is one of the darkest subjects imaginable. Please take care of yourself if you decide to do a deep dive of your own. Not only did Josh have a taste for children, but he was sadistic about it as well. The things found by Homeland Security are among the worst of the worst things to have ever been filmed. He was in real trouble this time. Jim Bob had no strings to pull with Homeland Security like he had with Arkansas police. There were no more friendly corporals or forgiving church leaders to protect him. This time, and probably for the first time in his life, Josh would have to answer for his crimes. Exactly a month after Josh's arrest, TLC canceled the Duggar show Counting On. I can't believe it took them that long, to be honest. Most of the family kept a low profile, though Jill and her husband Derek Dillard spoke out against both Josh and Jim Bob. Jury selection began for Josh's trial at the end of November. The prosecution laid out a devastating case with evidence that Josh was the only person who could have downloaded or engaged in certain activities on the company computer. They showed his text messages with wife Anna as evidence. On more than one occasion, illegal materials were accessed by the company computer right after Josh had messaged Anna telling her he would be staying late at the office. There was quite a bit of evidence that pointed right at Josh, and the jury convicted Josh of all counts on January 9, 2022. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Jim Bob had been called to testify during the pretrial evidentiary hearing, but a federal judge had deemed that he was not a credible witness. In his ruling, Federal Judge Brooks wrote of Jim Bob,
He admitted the touching was inappropriate, but he was unwilling to provide further details, pleading a lack of memory.
Judge Brooks was not convinced.
The court found Mr. Duggar's selective lapse in memory to be not credible. He was obviously reluctant to testify against his son.
Was it just family loyalty, or was there something darker at work? Just how much did Jim Bob know, and how much was he hiding? In my opinion, Jim Bob had never been honest. Police reports indicate he waited 16 months before reporting Josh's behavior to anyone outside the home, and his church seems to believe he was lying at that point as well. How much more does Jim Bob know about that he will never tell? I suspect that is an iceberg unto itself. Most of the focus during the various scandals has been on Josh, but what impact did it all have on the 4 Duggar daughters who had been abused by Josh and had to keep it a secret for years? Especially since they had to sit back and watch as Josh was pushed into the political limelight while they toiled as surrogate mothers to their younger siblings or were married off to other prominent fundamentalist families like prized broodmares. Supposedly. Allegedly. How can you justify putting the welfare of one child so far above the welfare of the rest? I doubt we will ever get a satisfactory answer to that question. So far, Anna seems to be holding true to her ATI roots. She gave birth to a 7th child while Josh was awaiting trial and remained loyally by his side through each hearing. She heard every nauseating detail that was revealed in the trial, and yet she has stood by him. Many people are baffled, but we know it's because of what she has been taught and indoctrinated with since birth. The more she suffers and forgives, the more radiant her spirit will be. Some of her family members have even offered her and her 7 children a place to live if she chooses to leave Josh, But in my opinion, there's little chance of her leaving the Duggar fold. My amateur opinion, as an outsider, is that Anna didn't just marry Josh, but the whole Duggar family and everything that comes with it. For better or for worse, she has made her decision and she intends to see it through as joyfully as she possibly can. Anna doesn't expect her reward of peace or happiness in this life, but instead focuses on an eternal award she believes she must suffer to achieve. My biggest takeaway from this entire series is that the Duggars' fundamentalist beliefs and the institutions which formed them have made victims of them all. Except maybe Jim Bob, that guy. But for most people who are raised in independent fundamentalist Baptist families who are homeschooled and indoctrinated by the ATI teachings and are then married off when they are barely adults, they are victims of a system which teaches them to repress their personal feelings and desires and to wear their trauma like badges of honor. Men like Bill Gothard, Jim Bob Duggar, and Michael Pearl created the perfect system to enable abusers to have total control over victims' body, mind, and soul. Like any true iceberg, I have only really begun to scratch the surface because what we know and can verify about this circle of independent fundamentalist Baptists is likely to just be the visible part of an iceberg all its own. Thank you to everyone who has listened to this series and stuck it out to the end. A special thanks to those who have subscribed to the channel. Stick around because there will be more videos to come, and I think you guys will find them just as interesting. I want to mention a few sources I used to help research these videos, including freeginger.org, recoveringgrace.org, and the Duggar Snark subreddit. I didn't use them as factual sources, but they did help me track down some leads and find some of the other sources. I could not have made this video without the contributions of those internet strangers, so if you're one of them, thank you. Have a wonderful day or night, and I will catch you next time.